program just started up this past fall, and we're busily working to implement all the courses and stuff like that. If you haven't heard the term kinesiology before, I like to always give kind of a quick overview. Kinesiology is a study of human movement, and it's an interdisciplinary study. So we actually do everything from so cellular biology, all the way up to sociocultural things. It's pretty interesting, and it kind of differentiates from something where if you're looking into colleges and you see something like exercise science, they tend to be more cell bio, physiology, and then maybe a little bit of biomechanics. But we go ahead and try to expand it to the full range of what kinesiology can be. So I'm pretty excited about it. My background is both the sociocultural side. So if you want to talk about how CrossFit is ruining fitness or improving fitness, I'm here for this. I'm here for this conversation. Similarly, I also worked in the strength and conditioning field for a while and as a personal trainer. So I also do the applied hands-on type stuff as well. And, you know, we're trying to create a program here that covers that full range of what it means to be someone who studies kinesiology. And we're pretty excited, like full stop. There's like so much going on, and like, oh, I get emails all the time, and we're just trying to get it all going. The one thing that you might want to consider, though, is that the way we do kinesiology at Augustana is a little bit different than you might find at a Big Ten university or a D1 school. And that's because we're taking this liberal arts approach. So, you know, in my world and the world of a lot of people who study kinesiology, it is this multi-interdisciplinary thing. And at Augustana, we're actually putting that into practice. So, for example, some of our electives come from public health. They come from philosophy. We're going ahead and expanding that as we go, but it's really kind of cool to be able to bring together a lot of different disciplines, because, you know, who here is taking a physics class? Just physics or chemistry, like one of the bench sciences, we call them. And basically, if you go ahead and you take chemistry, you're going to become a chemist. And you have, you know, what are the chemistry outcomes? It's like you get water-based stuff, like liquids, or you get solid, you know, like that type of thing. But with kinesiology, it's a field. So we actually bring in people who are chemists or who are physicists, and we bring them together around our individual area of study, which is physical activity. A quick note, our core curriculum, we do try to go ahead and offer that interdisciplinary approach through our core curriculum. So we have our intro course, which gives a big overview, but then we have things like anatomy and physiology, exercise phys, biomechanics, sociology of sport. So we cover a lot of those different areas just in the core curriculum itself. But again, we encourage people to branch out, diversify, and really kind of look into making kinesiology their own. What we're finding in the job market area for people who study kinesiology is some people are going to go ahead and they do it as a kind of a pre-med type thing. So they're going to go ahead and pre-medicine, pre-PT, pre-AT, pre-OT, basically anything with a T in it is a kinesiology, you know, base, and then you move out into that with higher levels of learning. But what we're seeing in the field is that there's not just the medical outcomes, but usually we see a lot of individuals become very entrepreneurial. So they kind of put together the things that they enjoy and put it together with physical activity. So we have students who would go on, yes, into the traditional PT, OT, AT, PT path. But we also have students who will go on and work for like the park service, and they'll be outdoors all the time. Or maybe they'll go ahead and do advanced study and work at a zoo and work with animals and stuff like that. So we see a whole range of outcomes come from it. What I'm hearing a lot from the students that are currently enrolled is interest in coaching, interested in working with kids at like summer camps, stuff like that. Trying to think of the other ones that I heard. We got a bunch of baseball players, and they're all like, I want to open up my baseball facility, and it's going to be the best facility ever. I'm like, are you going to do it in Illinois? Because they're all in Florida. Like, that's where all the facilities are. Like, oh, I can move to Florida. I'm like, okay, all right, we're getting there, right? So there's a lot of opportunities with a kinesiology degree because it is so flexible. And it's one of the things that we're pretty excited about. The last thing that I want to hit on before I kind of open it up to your guys' questions, because I could literally talk about this for hours, but I also don't want to waste your time. You guys have probably done some research, but I want to open it up to your questions, is we've got a new facility coming, and I'm super excited about it. But the cool thing is that we have the Peter Lindbergh MD Center for Health and Human Performance that they broke ground like the week before we shut down. So I was over in Carver, which is our athletic facility right now. And from the window of Carver, you could see them breaking ground. So me and a bunch of students were hanging out. We were watching them break ground. And we're super excited about this. It's going to house the kinesiology department as well as public health and our aquatics department. And we're getting like water polo, which I was like, water polo? That's awesome. If anyone's done water polo, it is probably the most strenuous activity you can do outside of like gymnastics, because you both have to stop yourself from drowning and play volleyball. But anyhow, so we have this facility coming, and one of the cool things that we have kind of set up is certain people want certain things out of kinesiology. So as I was mentioning, the baseball players, they want to do human performance. But we have people who want to be PTs, or they want to go ahead and work with elderly populations, or they're like, I want to teach kids. So we're actually going to have two different labs. And, you know, of course, students can take whichever one they want to. But the one space is for performance. So we're going to be looking at human performance, looking at things like VO2 max, which is a measure of how well you can perform. We're going to be looking at body composition, a whole lot of cool stuff on that side. And on the other side, it's going to be basically a gym where students will be able to train average everyday populations. And using a whole bunch of different modalities or ways of doing it. And we're super excited about these two different areas because like they're just so hands-on. And that's like one of the things that I'm a hands-on learner. Like I can read a book, that's great. I tend to read a book before I do things. But afterwards, I'm all about like, okay, now how do I do it in real life? And having these two spaces is going to be incredibly cool to be able to do that stuff in a very applied setting. So that's my big spiel. That's kind of where I'm at. Currently, with all of the stuff going on, I'm basically making lectures at the moment. So I've got this headset on for about 24 hours a day. So I apologize for my bad hair, but it is what it is. So I want to open up to you guys. What kind of questions do you have about either the program, kinesiology as a whole, or kind of what our plans are here? All right, what courses would a first-year student take? So in general, first-year students here take FYI courses and a couple of other things like that. But in your first year here, we encourage students to take our Introduction to Kinesiology course, which does the whole cell to society. It's got a lab component with it where we can go through kind of some of the ways that, for example, an exercise physiologist might go ahead and use kinesiology all the way through. We have one where we're basically watching videos like a sociologist would and going ahead and seeing whether this is empowering or disempowering. So kind of looking at it through that. So that's one of the core courses that we recommend. And the other one is Sociology of Physical Activity and Sport. And that kind of gives you a starting base for what you'll be doing moving forward. In the second year, we get into more of the anatomy and physiology. And part of that is because those tend to have heavy lab components. And we want students to get acclimated to the college, get acclimated to the department and that type of stuff before we throw them into some heavy coursework. FYI stands for first year inquiry. Kinesiology and pre-optometry. Oh, that's a good question. It really depends. So a lot of the pre-courses are, or the pre-pathways are to set you up with the courses that you need for applying to a graduate program, right? So the one that I'm more familiar with is the pre-PT and the pre-med pathway. So I'm not as familiar with the pre-optometry pathway. But what it usually is that we'll work your advisor in the pre-XXX, whatever that is, and kinesiology to make sure that you get the courses you need to apply to that program. And what we find is that a lot of these things have overlap in some course. So the hardest one that we found was biochemistry. Doing biochemistry with kinesiology is the hardest one. You'd have to basically start from the get-go with an idea that you want to do that. But people who want to get into that will have that. So most of them are doable. But if that is your goal, I would go ahead and declare that as early as possible with the advisor that you're assigned initially. And that way we can come up with a plan that will get you through in your 4-year time period. But technically, I have heard that it will be up in spring 2021. I have to remember what year it is. I'm at that point in my life where all the years kind of go together. I'm like, Backstreet Boys came out last year. Wait, nope, time traveled, not like that. So 2021, and we anticipate offering our first course in there in fall of 2021. And that's just because, like, I'm a realist. I know things like get like shuffled around. So if we can get it 2021 spring, high five. But we're planning to have it in fall 2021 because that way we can get all of the equipment in there, because we're using a lot of high-end equipment for a couple of different things. So like that VO2 max. VO2 max, for those who aren't aware, you can see this like if you Google exercise physiology. It's the person on the treadmill with a big gas mask on their face, and they're running as hard as they can. So we need to set that up, calibrate it, get proper training, get through all the things that we need to do for the equipment. So we anticipate that's going to be like our summer job, is basically setting all that up. Where on campus is it? I can't imagine where there's enough space. So you're not wrong. I'm telling you this. Like, so you've been to campus, so you know what this looks like. So here we go. So we got the tennis courts. Can you see? Oh, you got to do it on your screen, Mike. So you got the tennis courts there, and then you've got the art studio, which is where that road is, the art studio and the Abbey Art Studios. And that's going to kind of get shut down a little bit. And so it's taking up that space right there. And it should fit fine, 100%. Can you double major in biology and kinesiology, or major in? Yes. Yes, you can. We are looking at the pathways for that specifically, but for example, if you're going ahead and trying to get into sports medicine, we recommend that people take anatomy and physiology separately, and those are in the biology department. So those count as biology upper level electives. So yeah, we do believe that that's possible. It's one of the things that, again, your first semester here, you want to talk with an advisor so we can get you on track for that. The only thing that you might run into is if you're doing a sport, sometimes that can mess with your timing a little bit. But we anticipate, we actually went ahead and did it with, how do I explain this? So over winter, you can take a J-term course, and most of the athletes take one because you need to take a course over winter in order to stay on campus. And most of the athletes stay on campus so that they can train in preparation for, yeah, right. So we're offering a lot of J-term classes that allow you to fill in some of those gaps that you might have a more of a struggle with as a student athlete. But in general, we see that student athletes do have success doing double majoring and stuff like that. It's just a little bit, they have to be a little bit more on top of their game than some of the non-student athletes, but we do see it. Regarding the major with a different pre-health track, how would pre-med track work? Okay, so the thing with the pre-tracks is that most of them are not, and Mike, clarify me if I'm wrong, but this is the way that I understand them, is that they're a set of courses, but they're not technically a major, right? So they're courses that you would take in order to go ahead and apply to those programs. Is that pretty much right?
Correct.
So you would take kinesiology as your major, and then you would go ahead and you would take the additional courses that you would need to apply to med school. And that's kind of basically your advisor would work with you to make sure you get all those courses. Now, the big ones that I know are a little bit more difficult are the pre-PT, the pre-med, as the pre-versions that are a little bit more difficult, and it's only difficult because you have to plan ahead. Like really, if you mess up in your first year, you're probably good, but by the time that you're a sophomore, you really want to be on track to get that done. And again, there's offerings in J-term and stuff like that where we're trying our best to get the courses that you need available to you. Because the fun one, and this is me going off on a tangent, so this is what I do, it's my life, is that when you're applying to med school, you have to have certain courses done by junior year. So if you're going ahead and that's the route you're taking, we want you to have certain courses done by junior year that someone who's just taken a kinesiology major may not have to consider. So that's one of the big advising points that we work with students about. Do you think the double major plus athletics is realistic? It depends. It really does depend. It really depends. I would say that it's realistic if you are someone who is very well organized. And if you're organized in high school, um, that sometimes translates over. But I will tell you from personal experience, when you get to college, you get all this freedom for like a hot minute. And some people can really coast on that, and some people struggle with it more than others. What I have seen, and at least in my end, this is like one of those things that really drew me as a professor to come to Augustana, is that the coaches here tend to really like get on students if their GPA starts to slip. So the coaches are part of the advising family. And so there is that emphasis here, and the coaches are there to help you in a way that I'm just like super excited about. So is it realistic? I think that if you have the ability to kind of really work through and create a schedule that works for you, and then you can stay diligently on that, and you reach out to your support networks, which are your professors, your coaches. You have additional people on campus. It's a huge support network here that I've found. I think that it can be very successful. What courses do you have to take for pre-OT? That is a great question. I'm going to have to go to my list. I literally have lists for everything. This is my life. When I show you this, I'm gonna share screen so you guys can see what I see. This is we've been working on this to give you guys like the best advising possible. So this is what we do. So this is our pre-PT. You're asking about pre-OT. Let me switch over that. So this is our pre-OT, and this is what we would go ahead and advise you about when you sit down. Now, this is our way to view it. Just it's simple for us, but this would be your first year classes. These would be your second year, your third year. And then notice that we've got like this big opening here. That's what I was talking about, where we want you guys to have a certain amount of classes so that when you apply to those programs, you've completed those tasks so that you're able to apply more functionally. So for example, SOAN, so Introduction to Sociology 101, that would be a second year course that you'd want to take for pre-OT. There's some chemistry and psychology that you have that you would take in addition to kinesiology, and then physics and human development. So all the yellow ones are the ones that we look at for pre-OT. I can see all again. Yeah, I know. There's a whole lot of stuff. Okay, sweet. Appreciate it. Yeah, if you notice when I was over there, we actually have a tab for athletes and how athletes can take some of the pathways that are a little bit more challenging. What class do you make? So in general, we're recommending that athletes take courses when they're offered, depending upon what they want to do. It really is student-centric, right? So if you want to do pre-PT or pre-OT, and there's a J-term class that would fit in that, we're going to be like, go take that. Get it done. If it's something where your schedule, so with the courses, right, you have your general education requirements or perspectives, right? So you've got a perspective on the natural sciences, perspective on history, stuff like that. And then diversity, multicultural diversity, global diversity, those types of things. So we encourage students to take those over J-term as well, because often, and this, I don't know if you guys know this in admissions, but that's usually when we can offer like the really fun classes and give a perspective on it, because we get to see you guys every day. And so when we have that be the sole focus, we can offer some things that go a little bit more in depth, and we can go and do some like crazier things like, using statistics in poker, right? So something like that is something that we can offer in a short-term class that doing over the course of a whole semester kind of drags on a little bit. So we encourage people to take things that will go ahead and have one of the perspectives or diversity, or full stop. You're going to a liberal arts college, take something that's interesting to you that might not be in your major, that will allow you to kind of start thinking about things a little bit differently, right? Our goal here is that if you enter college with the same mindset that you leave college, we didn't do a good job. So taking courses that allow you to, do some new stuff is also something that's really cool about those J-term courses. All right. What does that class list look for? It's my secret hidden class list. You guys, seriously. All right, I'll share real quick. But I'm just telling you, it looks nuts now, and that's why I'm not like a big share on this, because like we don't want to freak anyone out. So we're talking pre-PT, right? Pre-PT, pre-OT looks very similar. Pre-AT has a couple less requirements, and particularly here, and you have to do first aid CPR. A lot of these pre are Gen Chem, and then a psych stats and human development. That's usually the big ones that we see. And these courses actually ask for physics, because when you go ahead and you're in those areas, they want you to understand the body in a slightly different way. So we're going to have a biomechanics course, and that's going to cover basically physics and the body from a movement standpoint. But with physics, you're going to learn a lot about things that aren't going to fit neatly into that human movement category that you would be using in an AT, OT, or PT situation. And then, yeah, pre-med for winter athlete. All of a sudden, we got these J-term courses thrown in there because we got to get them in. Great question. So labs have been the trickiest thing here with the online, the move to online. Oh my God, did I say the online? Is that like when people say the Facebook? I'm quitting. I'm done with this. I'm done with this whole thing right now. I'm over. No, I'm kidding. So in general, it depends on the lab. So I was really fortunate with my intro class that we got through all of the labs that required equipment in the first couple weeks. And then the second half, we could go ahead and do things that are equipment free, right? So things that you can do at home, stuff like that. I will tell you, it depends on the lab. So as incoming freshmen, you would be taking intro. That would be like the big course that you would take. And I would basically adapt the lab. So some of the early ones that we looked at were body composition. And there's ways that we can do body composition at home in a way that doesn't require a certain piece of equipment. But yeah, it is something that the faculty, literally all the faculty, are having conversations about how to give you the experience in the best possible way given the circumstances. The ones that I'm concerned about lab-wise are the ones that we haven't even put in yet. So the ones in the Lindbergh building. Those are the ones that I would be concerned about doing online, just because there's a certain visceral or tangible experience that you're getting from that is much harder to do. Also, the anatomy course, that's a little bit harder to do online. Like we could go ahead and say, here is a body part. I hope you like it, right? That's not the same thing as being able to work with a cadaver, right? And actually see how those parts connect. We've looked at some online programs, but it's just not the same experience. So right now, as an incoming kinesiology person, you're going to be fine. If this continues until spring of 2021 or fall of 2021, which I don't think it will, I hope not, because I got to leave the house. But right now, we're working on contingency plans in case we can't get the labs up and running in the way we want to. Oh, here we go. So the cadaver class is technically a 300 level class. We encourage people who are at least sophomore level to do it. And part of that is just you grow a lot in college, and it's really cool to see people who are seniors talking to people who are freshmen or incoming, because just the amount that you grow in the college experience. Like I always think of college as like, we're going to take all these world things, all these things in the world, and we're going to crush you with them in a little enclave, really hot, really fast. And by the end of it, hopefully we've sharpened you like steel, right? That's the idea behind it, not crush you under the weight of 1,000 books. So we need you to get to a certain point where your schedule is pretty good, you're solid with what you're doing, you feel confident as a person before we throw dead bodies in front of you, right? Like just, if you walk in your first day, there's a dead body in your dorm room, probably not going to react to it too well. But your second year, you're like, oh, dead body, must be Tuesday, right? So we can go ahead and then, you get a certain level of maturity, you get a certain level of experience, and, you get a little bit more resilience under your belt before we do that. Like when I did cadaver work, I did it with a bunch of nursing students, and they were flipping out because they took it as their first course, and they couldn't take the smell because dead bodies smell a little bit. Surprise. And they're like, oh my God, they're naked. I'm like, yeah, they're dead. They're going to be naked. We're not going to dress them up. just not going to work that way. So having that as a second year course, kind of at your earliest, is probably the best. It's really a different experience. And the professor who runs our cadaver lab here is awesome. And so like I kind of am, I'm trying to figure out how I can sneak into his class and take it. I might be like observing or something, like I just want to see what you do, or I want to see your style. You know, I'm going to make up some excuse, but I'm going to be in that class soon just to see how he does it, because his students have been like top notch. They love it. One thing I want to put out there is that if you have other questions or you think of something, feel free to contact Mike or myself. I'd be happy to answer them. My email's somewhere, right? I think so. Yeah. I'm not familiar with the IB sports exercise course, but if you send me some information, I can get back to you on that. I take the IB exam, but I'd be able to get a syllabus or something for the class. Okay. Yeah. Send me a syllabus and I can give you some information about that. So I'll be real honest, the sport field is huge. And so there's different types of courses, exams, and stuff associated with different organizations. So my big organization is the National Strength and Conditioning Organization. So if you have questions about that, I can help with that. Or the ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine. Those are the two big ones that have academic arms. So I've been affiliated with them. So I don't know much about the IB exam just yet, but yeah, hit me up. We're going to talk about that. I also get really nerdy about this. So like, I just love to know this stuff. You guys, appreciate it.
See ya.